So today we've come down to my local canal. I've fished this canal since I was a little kid with my dad, and I've got some great fish out of here. It can be hard, it can be easy. It's same as most waters, so you catch it when they're on, they're off, they're off. Today it's probably going to be quite hard because it's blazing sunshine. However, yesterday it absolutely tipped it down with rain all the way through the night as well, and we've turned up today and it doesn't normally colour up that much, this canal, and it's really coloured. You just got a couple of inches of clarity. That may work in our favour because it's bright sunshine, and I think if it was normal conditions and it was gin clear, we may actually struggle today. So I'm going to stay positive until it's over, and what we're going to do today is we're going to do one of my favourites, and that is we're going to use these little micro fry. It's a very shallow venue. We're going to use little 2 gram jig heads with those, maybe 1 gram jig heads, and it's a technique I've done for quite a few years now, but I first came across it when I was fishing a canal up country, and it was actually in a competition, and there was a great big guy and he was fishing up from me, and it was really tough, as canals can be when competitions happen. They switch off, and it's quite often the little perch and things which you can catch, and no one was really catching, and I watched this guy, and you know, I could see him just casting in between the little bushes on the far side, and I was fishing what I thought was quite light with kind of spinners and little plugs and things like that back then, and next thing is I see his rod absolutely looped over, and I thought, blimey, he's into a good fish. And I watched and I thought, oh, you know, competition or not, I'm going to go and give him a hand. That looks like a huge fish. So I go running up, and I've got his net, and I'm waiting out of this coloured water, and suddenly a little jack pike like this comes up, and in the net it goes, and it's got this teeny little lure out the side of its mouth. Like, it looks like a little matchstick, it's so small. And I had a good chat with him after that, and in fact he was a Polish angler, and he taught me an awful lot in that brief conversation, and he taught me about ultralight rods and small little jig heads and small little lures, and it just yeah, that really kind of ignited my fire on the small fishing and scaling down, much like the match fishing of the lure world in a way. And yeah, from then on I got home that night and googled and looked through everything, and ordered myself some little lures and some 1 and 2 gram jig heads and the right fluoro, and yeah, that was it. The next day I was straight down my local canal, and I was vertical jigging along the edges and getting little plucks off the little waspy perch like this, and you know, you get 6-8 ounces on a little 1 to 8 gram rod, and that's it. It feels like a kid again, really, and I think that's what it's all about. It's all about going out and having fun and getting lots of little plucks and pulls and getting bites, really, because that's why we go fishing, for lots of reasons, but ultimately we do go because we like catching fish and getting bites, and that's exactly what you get when you go light lure fishing, and that's what we're hoping for today. The plan today is for me to try and give you a few of the tips which work for me. They might not work exactly for you, you might tweak them, change them, but if you've never done it before, then it's definitely good foundations to be able to start light lure fishing. And if you have done it before, you never know, it might be something slightly different from what you're doing, or it just might be a new technique which you've never heard of or seen. So hopefully with these top tips you'll put a few more fish on the bank. You'll be able to check them out daily on our Fox Rage Facebook page, so keep checking and keeping updated on that, and I hope that they help put a few more fish on the bank for you. So I think a good place to start for a tip is to actually start with the tackle, because that's the first thing you're going to maybe purchase or borrow to be able to use. I recommend a really 1,000 size reel. It's going to go on a light rod, so it's going to keep the rod balanced. You're not doing lots of casting at all. In fact, a lot of it is underneath the rod tip, so you don't need a big heavy reel, and you're going to hold it all day. And light lure fishing is about being light yourself as well, so having all your tackle on you, the net on you, so you can just walk and you don't feel like you're laden with tackle. And then we look at the rod here. There's lots of different rods out there which will do the job, but really you're looking something between 1 and 10 gram, that sort of thing, 3 to 14 gram. That sort of weight rod is a good starting point. It's enough to be able to to feel the bites and get the sensitivity, and it's also enough to be able to set the hooks as well. And if you did get a rogue pike, it's enough to be able to cope with that as well. Braid, now that braid is vital. You've got to have braid for the qualities of it, really. So I'm using here 10-pound braid. Between 8 and 10-pound braid is ideal, and this is going straight through to 6-pound fluorocarbon there. And again, fluorocarbon's really, really important when you're perch fishing. If there's pike around, definitely you need to put a trace on. Some days the pike are on, some days they're not, so it doesn't necessarily mean there's pike in the venue, I've always got to use a trace. Some days you can just tell when you're perch fishing, a jack might come along, okay, it's time to put a trace on. Today, you just don't know until we start fishing, so we'll see how that goes. And then obviously we go down to the lure, and I've got a 2-gram jig head on there with a little micro fry, and because it's so coloured, it's a spiky micro, and I've got it in lemon tiger as well, so it's pretty much the brightest one we do, so fingers crossed, at least I know they're going to see it if it gets close to them. And that's really the tackle I use for all of my canal work and perch work, really, so that's a good starting point. So we've come here, it's not a lock, it's just a road bridge which comes over the canal, but it's a feature. And when you're perch fishing and you're predator fishing, you're looking for features, you're trying to think a bit like a perch, and where they're going to be and where they're going to hang out. You do catch them mid-river and things like that. There can be there can be underwater features in the canal which you can't see, so it's always worth covering open water as well, but specifically try and target the features is what works for me. When I come up to a feature, you can see I'm a rod length back, my tip's just on the edge, because as anglers we've got this thing where we think we always need to fish to the far side. We always want to cast to the far side of the canal and far side of the lake and the river, whereas in fact there's no difference from this margin to that far side margin over there. So if you think about it, why would the fish be over there and not there? They're definitely underneath your feet. So it's good to start there as a starting point. You can fish there after you've fished here. So and what I would do is I would come over and I would literally, I want to see what depth it is for a start. So I would get the lure and I'm just going to lower that down, and as it goes down I can see that that's, let it go slack. Once it goes slack, you know what the depth is. It's quite deep, so it's probably about 4 foot deep. So I know that it's 4 foot deep, and what I want to do then is have about a foot spare. Make sure your drag set's really important, because if you have it too tight, you can bump fish, you can lose fish, and the hooks can pull, and you're fishing right under your rod tip. So yes, you've got a soft rod, but just use your drag. And I would simply just lift and let it go up and down, sometimes little ones, keeping it right down on the bottom, and then lifting it maybe the full length and going all the way along. And I can nearly guarantee that if you do this and work along jetties and the edges of bridges and things like that with these little 2-gram jig heads and micro fry, you will pick up perch without a shadow of a doubt. And that's a really, 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 really good tip. And once you've done all the way along and you don't feel there's anything there, the next one is to actually get it underneath the bridge. And that takes a little bit of, okay, so it's like a swing and a flick, and let it go underneath. Feel it down really quickly on a tight line. You can't do the vertical jigging as much, but what you can do is you can just bounce it across the bottom, taking up the slack. And perch and predators absolutely love being underneath bridges. They always will. It's cover from above. They're quite often underneath the bridge and tucked in against the side, because then they've got nothing behind them, because predators eat predators, and then they can watch out. That seems to work really, really well. So I think those are 2 great starting points if you've not done vertical jig fishing before, is to go find the features, fish the inside line, vertical jig, fish underneath as much as you can by just flick it casting underneath, and then start casting to the far side, casting every hour of the clock if you like as you go all the way round and covering that water. And once you've fan cast it and you vertical jigged it, usually perch, usually they're there, you're going to get a take pretty quickly and on to the next feature. You just keep doing that, and you will pick up more fish as the day goes on. So you may think fishing a very small little lure with a little jig head and bouncing it across the bottom, you're going to get snagged all the time. If you did it with a bigger lure, a heavier lure, and you just kept trying to crawl it across the bottom, yes, you would get snagged all the time, and you'd have to use very heavy tackle to be able to get your lures back. But here, because we're using light rods and kind of little 1, 2 and 3 gram jig heads, you do feel the snags. You can feel branches and debris, and actually, but you're not ripping it back. You're quite often skipping and bouncing it back. What it does is it actually enables the lure to go around or over the snags. So in fact, you lose an awful lot less than you think you would. And it's just a case of kind of getting a feel for the bottom. And if you feel a snag, don't just bend into it. Just gently twitch the rod, just to twitch it over the top of the snag. I mean, today I've gone through lots of weed beds and all the other things which gets chucked into canals, and this is still the same jig head, still 2 gram in size, and I haven't lost one at all yet. So it just goes to show you can actually not lose the tackle you would think you would lose from skipping lures across the bottom. However, there is the fact that sometimes it does snag a little bit on the hook point, or you do have to just pull to get it off. And what's really, really important is to, when that does happen, is not just to carry on fishing, is actually to bring your lure in and have a look at it, and make sure the hook point's okay. Because obviously, if you've got a blunt hook, you're not going to get a good hook hold. You might get a hook pull when you're playing the fish. So it's really important. What I do, I've got a hook sharpener there. I just run my fingers down it first of all, each side of it, and you can sometimes feel the hook point's been turned over it. Just feel a little scraping feel on your finger, and then you just simply get the hook sharpener. I've just put some red tape on it so I can always find it, and just do up the sides of the hook, once down the front, and just make sure that it's enough to prick you. It's sharp on your nail, it sticks on your nail, and it's good to go. Literally takes seconds and makes such a huge difference from keeping your hook point sharp in every type of fishing, not just lure fishing. But when you're going to bounce a very fine wire lure across the bottom, which is needle sharp, it has to be needle sharp, because perch have got very bony little mouths, and as soon as you hook them, they just shake like crazy. So that has to go in, penetrate in, and go in there. So to do that, it needs to be sharp, and that means you need to carry a hook sharpener and keep an eye on your hook points. That's a really good tip, which definitely puts more fish on the bank for me. So when I'm doing my lure fishing, I'm quite robotic with the way I cast. Not retrieve, because I'm always changing that, because on different days they want different things. Sometimes it's doing what I'm doing now, which is just, I call it leapfrogging across the bottom. I much prefer it when they're really on and they want quite a fast, steady retrieve with just a few little twitches, because they're chasing and then twitches are a trigger point, and then they smash the lure, and I just love that. That's the thing I love about lure fishing, is when you can really work lures fast and get really hard hits and stuff. That's just me as a person, that's what I like. Some people love just twitching them across the bottom. There's so many different styles, everybody works at their own styles, but you've got to adapt on the day. You have got to change your lure retrieve so that you can find out how they do want it on the day. But when I go back to my being a bit robotic with my casting, I'm always going to cast underarm, overarm, whatever, but quickly turn the bail arm and my hand's on there, and I'm watching that braid go down. So there's a couple of reasons for doing it. One is I'm watching that braid go down. I can tell, give or take a few inches or half a foot, I can tell what depth it is from just watching it go down. You can just see that arc and you can tell how deep it is. Canals are quite uniform normally, but on lakes and on rivers, it's really definitely worth watching that braid and just seeing what you're fishing over and what sort of depths. Closing the handle really quickly and having my hand on the reel is very, very important, because where I'm casting quite often to features, so there's a predator in there, and that predator is always alert, it's always ready to be opportunistic and to catch whatever it can which is passing by, whether it's a fish or an insect or whatever. So if I cast to a likely looking place and I've got my bail arm open, I'm just looking around over there, and then oh, there we go, and I start reeling in, that fish could have literally sucked in that lure, blown it out again. There was no resistance or anything to set that little hook in there, and it's gone. That's it, game over. So what I do is I'm casting and then close, and then away we go. So it's straight away watching it go down on the bottom, leave it for a couple of seconds, works really well, and then twitching it back. If I was to get a fish, my handle, I'm straight away on that handle, and I'm ready to turn and lift into a fish if I get one and a bail arm shut. So it's really important to do that every single time. You just get into the habit of doing it with all the lure fishing you do, and it can just catch those fish which are just straight on the lure as soon as it goes in. So we've just come along here, and there's a bridge above us. Obviously underneath the bridge is good, but a really, really good place to initially start is, depending on where the sun is, you're going to get a different shadow cast. So at the moment the shadow's coming down, and there's a line, it's nearly a solid line from dark to light. It's not as enhanced today because there's so much clarity in the canal, but it's still there. And as a predator, if they hide in the bushes, if you like, or in the darkness of that shadow, they're hidden from their prey. They've got a natural advantage. They've usually got better eyesight than their prey anyway. And if they're hiding in the dark water, that's another edge for them. And they're always trying to gain edges, whether it's hiding behind rocks and boulders or reeds or whatever, to try and gain an ambush point. So that shadow, that line, is an ambush point. So if you can run a lure just along the light line, quite often they'll just come bolting out and they'll smash into that lure just as it comes along. And another good one is when you actually do get your lure into your feet. You know, it's the same as fly fishing for trout. They call it on the hang. When you get the fly next to the boat, you just hang and you just wait, because you get so many follows off trout, and you're hanging it there, and it can be stationary or slowly going down, and whack, they hit it without anything done to it at all. Well, it's exactly the same when you're perch fishing as well. So when you do get it in close, keep it on the hang as such. But what you can do is what I call kind of, you'd get the lure in close and you'd walk the dog. So you get it in close and you lift and you kind of walk the lure around the front of you, because perch, they don't just go, oh, there's a lure, I'm going to bite that one. Sometimes, yeah, but quite often they follow, and when they follow, you need to trigger them to get them to take lifting and vertical jigging just in front of you. It doesn't need to be a feature at your feet, but it's just because they came in. You might get a fish to take which followed you in 2 or 3 casts ago, and you don't realise it's just sulking down there, and it's not until you vertical jig out in front of your own feet, suddenly bam, he hits you again because he came in a couple of casts ago. So vertical jigging can be really, really good, just to walk around the swim. Whoa, whoa, whoa. There you go. Whoa, just like that. There you go. Little perch. Huh. Well, that just goes to show that walking the dog around the swim can definitely pick up extra bites. There you go, it's gone. Combine that fishing down that light edge, and then wherever you fish, just having a little go now and again around in front of you, just in case there was any following fish sat down there. Definitely that should put a few more fish on the bank for you. So I think another top tip is lure colour. So everyone knows that lure colour can make a lot of difference to your fishing. Sometimes you might get to a venue at first light and you might want a bright lure, sometimes they want a dark lure. Quite often I find that the lure changes through the day. You might fish an area and have a few fish, and then change to a different lure colour, and you'll pick up those other fish just because you've put a different colour lure through that same swim, but they weren't hitting that initial lure. So what we've done is we've actually, rather than going out and having get the pack where you've got all the same colour, we've now got packs where you've got multicoloured lures in. so you can get one pack with 4 different colours. That's great. It means you can just put one pack in your bag and you can cover all the different light options. So we've got it in the ones I've been using today, which is the micro spiky. We've also got it in the micro fry, the micro grub tail, and the micro tiddler fast. So the whole range of the micro is now available in these really handy colour coded packs. Okay, so it's been a tough day. We've managed some fish. Actually we've managed to finish in style. So I think the final tip I'm going to give you, and it has to be one of the best tips for fishing for perch. Quite often you can catch a perch and you can catch a nice perch and get excited and get your friend to take a picture, maybe you weigh it, and before you know it, that's it. You may even move to the next swim. Well, perch are usually shoal fish until they get really, really big. But when they're, you know, most of their lives, they work as a pack. So when you've got that one on, those other fish don't know really that he's not chasing a real fish, or they don't know necessarily that he's been hooked, and they're a little bit frenzied, they're kind of switched on. So if you do get a perch, yes, get excited, of course, you know, but unhook it, put it in the net, and straight away cast back out again and do quite a fast erratic retrieve. And if there's any switched on fish out there, bam, straight away you can get into them. And what can happen is actually you can catch quite a lot, and you can start taking the shoal apart really, really quickly before they actually wise up and know what's going on. And that is exactly what has just happened here. So one fish in the net straight away, and actually we're gonna show you now that that tactic definitely works. Look at that, absolutely beautiful. And that just goes to show how effective light lure fishing can be. There we go, whoop, 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 whoop. A couple of lovely perch, and plenty more in the net as well. 2 gram jig head, little fox micro spiky, lemon tiger, in what most people probably wouldn't bother fishing because the conditions really do look very poor when you look at that clarity. That just goes to show. I'm going to rest these back in the water now because it's quite sunny and they won't like that on their eyes. And I think the thing about light lure fishing is you're using such a small little lure. People often see it as a wasping technique, and when they say wasp, that's like a very small little perch. It's got the stripes on, little wasping. But that's proof there in the pudding that in fact I was trying to catch little wasps today. The bigger fish wanted it. I fish on Chew Valley Reservoir quite a lot, and quite often when we're chucking big replicant lures around and big crankbaits and things, you're watching 20-pound plus pike coming up, and they're just rolling on all the little larvae and all the insects which are coming up in big balls, and you're watching them do it, and you can see them doing it, and then you see how many fly anglers actually catch huge pike out of that venue on little buzzers, and then you watch the pike eating the buzzers. And it's the same sort of principle with using very small little lures. If you use a big lure for these fish, you're closing that window of how many fish you can actually catch, because you're shutting that down because of your lure size. So, okay, I'm not saying that you will always catch great perch like this when you use small lures, but there's every chance, there really is. And I think that net shows you that small lure tactics can really put decent sized fish on the bank, and it's not just of a wasping technique.